Imagine you are sitting across a chessboard. Your opponent makes a move and you instantly see not just the next step but the next 5. Every piece on the board becomes predictable. Every outcome starts to bend in your favor. Now think about this. What if life and business worked the same way? What if success was never about luck, but about seeing 5 moves ahead while everyone else can only see 1? Patrick Bet-David, in his powerful book Your Next 5 Moves, reveals exactly how the world's most strategic leaders, entrepreneurs, and visionaries think. And today I'm going to take you deep into this blueprint, a strategy that can change the way you make decisions, the way you chase success, and the way you live your life. Before we dive into the 5 moves, you need to know something important. Patrick Bet-David is not just another author giving advice. He's a man who came to America as an immigrant with nothing but a suitcase and big dreams. He served in the U.S. Army, entered the financial services industry with no prior knowledge, and through relentless hustle and strategy, he built PHP Agency, one of the fastest-growing financial companies in America. Beyond that, he built Valuetainment, a media platform followed by millions worldwide. His journey wasn't a straight line. He failed, got rejected, struggled financially, and questioned himself many times. But what separated him from the rest was his ability to think like a chess master, not just reacting to life's challenges, but anticipating them. He discovered that success is a game of strategy, and strategy means having clarity about your next 5 moves. In business and life, most people are only thinking about their next step, how to get a promotion, how to make some extra money, how to solve a small problem. But the world's greatest achievers, they think 5 moves ahead. That's the difference between someone who survives and someone who builds an empire. So let's begin with the first and most important move, knowing yourself. Why is this the first move? Because without understanding who you really are, every other move becomes blurry. You might chase goals that don't align with your true self. You might follow someone else's dream, only to realize years later that it never fulfilled you. Patrick explains that self-awareness is the foundation of every major success story. Knowing yourself means asking the hard questions. What do I really want out of life? Am I playing the right game? Am I motivated by money, by recognition, by freedom, by impact, or by something else entirely? Think about it. Most people go through life without answering these questions. They copy what society tells them. They get a degree because everyone else is getting one. They take a job because their parents told them it's safe. They get married because that's the timeline they've been taught. But they never stop to ask, what do I truly want? That's why so many people feel stuck, lost, or unfulfilled even if they look successful on the outside. Patrick says the first move to greatness is radical honesty with yourself. If you're money-driven, admit it. If you crave recognition, own it. If freedom is your highest value, don't settle for a life where you're chained to rules. If impact drives you, find ways to leave a legacy, because when you know your true driver, you can align your moves with it. Otherwise, you're climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. Patrick gives an example from his own life. When he started working in financial services, he noticed many of his colleagues were just there to make money. But for him, it wasn't only about money, it was about freedom and impact. He wanted to build something big, something that could outlive him. That clarity guided every decision he made. It wasn't easy. He had to take risks, go against advice, and bet on himself. But because he knew what he wanted, he stayed consistent. Think about your own life for a moment. What's your driver? Is it financial security? Is it recognition? Is it freedom? Or is it contribution? Imagine 2 people starting the same business. One wants money, the other wants recognition. Their strategies will be completely different. The first one might focus on profit margins, cost-cutting, and scalability. The second one might focus on building a personal brand, creating content, and getting media coverage. Neither is wrong, but if they confuse their drivers, they'll end up frustrated. So Patrick gives us a framework to identify ourselves. He says you must define your vision, your identity, and your motives. Vision is the big picture. What do you see for yourself 5, 10, 20 years from now? Identity is how you define yourself. Are you an entrepreneur, an artist, a leader, a parent, a creator? And motives are your internal engines. Why do you wake up every morning? Some people think they want freedom, but when you really dig deeper, they actually want recognition. Others think they want money, but what they really want is security. You have to dig until you reach the truth. Patrick calls this the X-ray of the mind. Just like a doctor uses an X-ray to see beyond the surface, you have to X-ray your own mind to see what's really inside. Without it, you'll keep making surface-level decisions that don't fulfill you. Now here's the kicker. Knowing yourself is not a one-time exercise, it's a continuous process. As you grow, as your circumstances change, as you experience victories and failures, your vision and motives may evolve. Maybe at 20, you're driven by money. At 30, you want recognition. At 40, you crave freedom. At 50, you want impact and legacy. That's okay. The key is to stay self-aware at every stage. Otherwise, you'll chase outdated goals that no longer inspire you. Patrick warns that the worst trap is living someone else's life. If your parents wanted you to be a doctor, but you want to be an entrepreneur, you must choose. If society tells you to play it safe, but you want to take risks, you must choose. If your friends want comfort, but you want greatness, you must choose. At the end of the day, you're the one who will live with the consequences of your choices. Knowing yourself also requires brutal honesty about your weaknesses. Patrick says you must look in the mirror and face your flaws. Are you lazy? Are you impatient? Do you lack discipline? Are you afraid of confrontation? If you can't admit your weaknesses, they will control you from the shadows. But once you admit them, you can work on them, delegate them, or design strategies around them. For example, if you know you procrastinate, set tighter deadlines and accountability systems. If you know you lack knowledge in an area, hire or partner with experts. If you know you struggle with confidence, practice speaking, take courses, and expose yourself to challenges until you grow. But never lie to yourself. The world is already full of people lying to you. Don't join them by lying to yourself. Patrick compares knowing yourself to building the foundation of a skyscraper. If the foundation is weak, no matter how tall the building is, it will collapse. But if the foundation is strong, you can build as high as you want. In life, that foundation is self-awareness. Without it, every other move you make will eventually crumble. Let me give you a story to bring this home. Imagine two friends, Alex and Daniel. Both graduate from college. Alex chooses a corporate job because it's safe. Daniel chooses entrepreneurship because he craves freedom. For the first few years, Alex looks like the winner. He's earning a stable salary, buying a car, moving into a nice apartment. Daniel, on the other hand, struggles. He's broke, stressed, working crazy hours. Everyone tells him he made a mistake. But 10 years later, the tables turn. Alex is stuck in middle management, frustrated, living paycheck to paycheck. Daniel, after years of struggle, finally cracks the code, builds a successful business, and lives the life he wanted. What's the difference? Daniel knew himself. He knew freedom was more important than security, and he was willing to pay the price. Alex followed the script society gave him, and that's why he ended up stuck. This is the power of knowing yourself. It doesn't guarantee immediate success, but it sets you on the path that will eventually fulfill you. Patrick also emphasizes that you must know what game you're playing. Are you playing the game of survival, the game of success, or the game of significance? The game of survival is about paying the bills and making ends meet. The game of success is about building wealth, status, and achievements. The game of significance is about leaving a legacy, impacting others, and changing the world. Most people are stuck in survival. Some reach success. Very few reach significance. Where are you right now? And where do you want to be? Knowing this determines how you'll plan your next moves. If you're in survival, your moves will focus on stability. If you're in success, your moves will focus on scaling and dominating. If you're in significance, your moves will focus on impact and legacy. There's no wrong answer. But the tragedy is when someone thinks they're playing one game while actually playing another, like someone claiming they want significance but spending all their time chasing money, or someone claiming they want freedom but building a life that chains them to responsibilities. You must be clear. Self-awareness is clarity, and clarity is power. This brings us to the end of the first part of Move 1, Know Yourself. We've uncovered why self-awareness is the foundation, how to identify your true drivers, and why brutal honesty with yourself is the ultimate weapon. But there's still more to this move: how to shape your identity, how to align your actions with your vision, and how to design your life around who you truly are. And that's exactly what we'll dive into in the next section. Now let's go even deeper into Move 1, Know Yourself. We've already established that self-awareness is the foundation of every great achievement. But Patrick Bet David explains that true self-awareness is not just about what drives you. It's also about shaping your identity with intention. Most people let the world decide their identity. They accept labels given by their parents, teachers, employers, or even random strangers. But leaders, visionaries, and high achievers create their own identity. They decide who they are, and then they live in alignment with that decision. Identity is powerful because it dictates behavior. If you see yourself as a victim, you will always act like one. If you see yourself as a leader, you will naturally make leadership decisions. If you identify as a creator, you will keep creating no matter the circumstances. That's why one of the most important questions you can ask yourself is, who am I becoming? Identity is not fixed. It's fluid. You can rewrite it at any point. But the tragedy is that most people never take control of that process. They let their circumstances or failures define them. For example, someone who fails at a business venture may start to call themselves a bad entrepreneur or not cut out for business. That identity then becomes a prison. But someone else who experiences the same failure might say, I'm a fighter, I'm a learner, and I'm an entrepreneur who just hasn't cracked the code yet. That identity empowers them to keep going. Same event, different identity, different destiny. Patrick shares that your identity must be aligned with your vision. If your vision is to build a billion-dollar company, your identity can't be someone who plays small. If your vision is to be a world-class athlete, your identity can't be someone who gives up when things get tough. You must become the person your vision demands. This means designing rituals, habits, and standards that reinforce your identity. For example, if your vision is to become a respected leader, then you must build habits of reading, studying leadership, practicing communication, and making decisions with courage. If your vision is to achieve financial freedom, your identity must include being disciplined with money, thinking long-term, and learning about investing. Identity without habits is just a dream. Habits without identity is unsustainable. But when you combine both, you create unstoppable momentum. Patrick also highlights the importance of being brutally clear about your motives. Why do you want what you want? Many people chase goals for the wrong reasons. They want to be rich to prove others wrong, not because they truly value wealth. They want to be famous because they crave validation, not because they want to inspire. When your motives are shallow, you may reach your goals but still feel empty. But when your motives are aligned with your true self, success feels meaningful. For example, Patrick admits that in the early stages of his career, recognition was a big driver for him. He wanted to prove himself as an immigrant who could rise above all odds. But as he grew, his motives shifted. He started caring more about impact, legacy, and helping others reach their potential. That shift gave him new energy and a bigger purpose. Your motives can evolve too, but you must always check them. Ask yourself regularly, why am I doing this? Is it for approval, for money, for freedom, for security, or for impact? The clearer you are about your motives, the stronger your decisions will be. Let's bring this down to a practical exercise you can use right now. Take a sheet of paper and write down the following. My vision for the next 20 years. My identity today versus my desired identity. My core motives. Money, freedom, recognition, security, impact, or something else. Once you write these down, study them. Ask yourself, are my daily actions aligned with my vision? Is my identity helping me move closer to my goals or holding me back? Are my motives pure, or am I chasing things that don't fulfill me? This simple exercise can give you more clarity than years of trial and error. But Patrick also warns about one thing. Self-awareness without action is useless. You can spend years journaling about your motives and identity. But if you don't act, nothing changes. Knowing yourself is only move one, the foundation. The next moves will require strategy, execution, and growth. But without this foundation, all the other moves will collapse. Another key element of knowing yourself is understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Too many people try to become great at everything, and they end up mediocre at most things. Patrick advises you to double down on your strengths and neutralize your weaknesses. For instance, if you're naturally great at communication but weak at organization, build a team where someone else handles structure while you focus on speaking and leading. If you're brilliant with numbers but struggle with charisma, focus on finance and operations while partnering with someone who shines in public. Success is not about being perfect. It's about being self-aware enough to design around your strengths and weaknesses. Patrick reminds us that every legendary figure in history had weaknesses. Steve Jobs was not known for being kind. Elon Musk is not the most polished communicator. Warren Buffett admits he's not great at technology. But they all doubled down on what they were best at and designed their environments to complement their weaknesses. That's why knowing yourself is not about fixing everything. It's about maximizing your edge. At the same time, you must know your blind spots. These are weaknesses you don't even realize you have, but others see clearly. For example, you may think you're a great leader, but your team feels you micromanage. You may think you're disciplined, but your spouse sees that you waste hours scrolling on your phone. Blind spots are dangerous because they sabotage you silently. The best way to uncover blind spots is to seek feedback from people you trust. Mentors, coaches, close friends, or colleagues who are honest. Yes, it's uncomfortable to hear the truth, but it's necessary for growth. Self-awareness is not about ego, it's about clarity. And clarity is power. Let's look at one more story that brings this idea home. Patrick once asked a room full of entrepreneurs, "How many of you want to be millionaires?" Almost every hand went up. Then he asked, "How many of you are willing to sacrifice weekends, miss parties, and work 14-hour days for years?" Almost every hand went down. That's the difference between wishful thinking and self-awareness. Most people want the result, but they're not honest about the price. If you truly know yourself, you'll know whether you're willing to pay that price. And if you're not, that's okay. Just don't lie to yourself. This is the brutal honesty Patrick talks about. If you want a six-pack but you're not willing to work out and eat clean, then admit you don't want it badly enough. If you want a billion-dollar business but you're not willing to take massive risks, admit it. If you want freedom but you're addicted to comfort, admit it. The moment you stop lying to yourself, you gain power. Because now you can design a life that matches who you really are, instead of living in fantasy. That's why Move 1 is so critical. It forces you to stop pretending, stop following the crowd, and start living authentically. Only when you know yourself can you plan your next moves with precision. So to recap, Move 1. Know yourself means three things. 1. Know your vision. What future are you building? 2. Know your identity. Who are you becoming and what habits reinforce that identity? 3. Know your motives. Why are you doing all of this? Combine these three and you'll have a crystal clear foundation. Without them, you'll always feel lost chasing goals that don't matter. Patrick Bet-David calls this the X-ray move because it reveals the truth beneath the surface. Most people avoid this because the truth is uncomfortable, but those who embrace it gain unstoppable power. And that, my friend, is the essence of the first move. In the next move, we're going to step into the mind of a strategist. Because once you know yourself, the next challenge is learning how to reason, analyze, and make decisions like a grandmaster. This is where the game of success truly begins. Move 2 is where the real shift begins. Once you know yourself, the next challenge is learning how to think strategically. Most people operate on impulse. They react to situations instead of anticipating them. They make decisions based on emotion, fear, or temporary comfort. But the great ones, the visionaries, the entrepreneurs, the leaders, they operate like chess masters. They don't just see the present. They see the patterns, the consequences, the ripple effects. Patrick Bet-David calls this move reasoning and strategy, and he believes it's the single biggest difference between average performers and elite performers. Let's start with reasoning. Reasoning is the ability to think through problems, analyze information, and make logical decisions. Without reasoning, strategy is impossible. Most people think they are rational, but the truth is emotions drive almost all their decisions. Think about it. How many times have you bought something just because it felt good in the moment? How many times have you said something in anger, only to regret it later? How many times have you avoided an opportunity because of fear? That's emotional decision-making, and it's the enemy of strategic thinking. Reasoning requires you to slow down, analyze the facts, and separate emotion from logic. Patrick says a good strategist asks better questions than the average person, while others are asking, "What do I want right now?" A strategist asks, "What will this decision cost me in the long run? What are the second and third order consequences? How will this choice affect my vision 5 years from now?" Let's take an example. Imagine you're offered a promotion at work. Most people would jump at it because more money and a better title sound good. But a strategist pauses and asks, "Will this new role align with my long-term vision? Will it give me more freedom or less? Will it teach me skills that I can leverage later? Or will it trap me in a golden cage?" This deeper reasoning separates the ones who live reactively from the ones who build empires. Strategy is about positioning yourself for future success. Just like in chess, you don't move a piece randomly. You move it to set up future moves. In life and business, strategy means planning not just for today, but for tomorrow and beyond. Patrick emphasizes that there are 4 key abilities of great strategists: seeing the chessboard clearly, anticipating the opponent's moves, calculating the trade-offs, and executing with patience. Let's break them down. First, seeing the chessboard clearly. In life, the chessboard is your environment, your industry, your career, your relationships, your finances. Do you see where the opportunities are? Do you see where the threats are? Most people don't even bother to look. They just move blindly. A strategist takes time to study the field. For example, in business, this might mean understanding your competitors, your customer behavior, and the market trends. In personal life, it might mean studying your habits, your circle of influence, and your financial health. Second, anticipating the opponent's moves. In chess, a grandmaster doesn't just think about his own move. He thinks about how his opponent will respond. In life, your opponent is not always a person. It can be circumstances, obstacles, or challenges. A strategist asks, if I take this action, what will likely happen next? If I launch this business, how will competitors react? If I change careers, what obstacles will I face? This foresight allows you to prepare instead of being caught off guard. Third, calculating trade-offs. Every decision has a cost. If you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. Most people ignore this reality. They chase opportunities without considering what they're sacrificing. A strategist knows that every move has a price and they calculate it carefully. For example, if you choose to start a business, you're sacrificing stability, comfort, and free time. Is it worth it? If you choose to stay in your job, you're sacrificing freedom and growth. Is it worth it? Great strategists don't avoid sacrifices. They choose the ones that align with their vision. Finally, executing with patience. Strategy is useless without execution, and execution requires patience. Too many people ruin their strategy by being impatient. They expect instant results. They abandon plans when obstacles appear. But a true strategist knows that big moves take time. Just like in chess, sometimes you set up your pieces for 10 moves before you strike. In business and life, patience is power. Patrick gives us a practical framework for developing reasoning and strategy. He calls it thinking in moves. Every time you face a decision, ask yourself, what happens if I do this? What happens if I don't? What are the short-term gains and long-term consequences? What's my opponent's likely reaction? What alternative moves do I have? This simple framework forces you to slow down, analyze, and think ahead. Over time, it becomes second nature. Let's look at a real-life example. Imagine an entrepreneur deciding whether to expand his business into a new market. An emotional decision would be, yes, let's do it, it feels exciting. But a strategic decision would involve analyzing the market demand, the cost of expansion, the strengths of competitors, the readiness of the team, and the potential risks. Then he would anticipate what competitors might do. Will they lower prices, improve their products, or fight aggressively? He would calculate the trade-offs. Expanding might bring growth but also strain resources. Finally, he would decide whether the move aligns with his long-term vision. That's strategic thinking in action. Patrick also teaches that reasoning means controlling your emotions. Emotions cloud judgment. When you're angry, you exaggerate threats. When you're excited, you underestimate risks. When you're fearful, you avoid opportunities. A strategist acknowledges emotions but doesn't let them drive decisions. Instead, they use logic, data, and patterns. Patrick himself learned this the hard way. In his early career, he made several impulsive decisions that cost him money and credibility. But as he grew, he trained himself to pause, analyze, and think ahead. That discipline transformed his business and his life. Reasoning also means challenging assumptions. Most people accept things at face value. They never question the truths they've been taught. But strategists challenge everything. They ask, is this really true? Is there another way to look at this? What if the opposite were true? For example, conventional wisdom might say, you need a college degree to succeed. A strategist asks, is that always true? What about Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg? What about fields where skills matter more than degrees? By challenging assumptions, Strategists discover opportunities that others overlook. Another powerful tool Patrick talks about is scenario planning. This means imagining different possible futures and preparing for them. For instance, if you're an investor, you don't just plan for the market going up. You also plan for the market going down. If you're building a business, you don't just plan for success, you also plan for setbacks, competition, and crises. By preparing for multiple scenarios, you stay calm when others panic. Let's pause for a moment and think about how this applies to your life. What big decision are you facing right now? Maybe it's about your career, your finances, or your relationships. How would a strategist approach it? They would ask, what are my options? What are the consequences of each option? What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? How can I prepare for both? What's the move that aligns most with my long-term vision? If you start thinking this way, you'll immediately separate yourself from the crowd. Because most people don't think past the next step. They don't see the second or third move, and that's why they stay stuck. Patrick reminds us that business and life are won by those who think further ahead. Just like in chess, the one who can think 5 moves ahead dominates the one who only sees 1. This is why move 2 is so critical. Without reasoning and strategy, even if you know yourself, you'll still make poor decisions. But once you combine self-awareness with strategic thinking, you become unstoppable. Let me share a quick story to illustrate this. There was once a young entrepreneur who had 2 options: sell his company now for a few $1,000,000, or keep building it for the chance of a much bigger payout later. Most people around him told him to take the money. After all, a few million is life-changing. But he thought strategically. He asked, if I sell now, what will I do next? Will I feel fulfilled, or will I feel like I gave up too soon? If I hold on, what's the upside? What's the downside? What's the market trend? After careful analysis, he decided not to sell. 5 years later, the company grew massively, and he sold it for hundreds of millions. That's the power of reasoning and strategy. It doesn't mean you'll always be right, but it means your decisions will be based on clarity, not impulse. And in the long run, clarity wins. So to summarize move 2, reasoning and strategy, it's about 4 things: seeing the chessboard clearly, anticipating reactions, calculating trade-offs, and executing with patience. Master these and you'll start making decisions like a grandmaster. And when you combine this with knowing yourself, you'll not only know what you want, but also how to get it. In the next move, we're going to explore one of the most important skills in leadership and business: building the right team. Because no matter how smart or strategic you are, you can't play this game alone. You need allies, partners, and soldiers who share your vision. And that's what move 3 is all about. Success in life is not about moving fast, it is about moving smart. Imagine 2 chess players facing each other. One is eager, rushing pieces forward without much thought, while the other is calm, patient, studying every angle, anticipating every counter, and already thinking 5 moves ahead. In the end, it is never the impatient player who wins. It is the strategist, the one who sees the game not just in the moment but as a bigger picture. Patrick Bet-David calls this the ability to reason from the chessboard. The moment you start looking at your life and business like a chessboard, everything changes. You begin to see not just your immediate move, but also the potential chain of reactions that will follow. This is not just theory, it is practical strategy. Think about how most people live. They wake up, check their phones, rush to work, handle tasks as they come, and react to whatever problems appear that day. That is not strategy, that is survival. But the masters of life, the grand strategists, they think differently. They plan weeks, months, even years ahead. They are not reacting. They are creating the flow of the game itself. Patrick shares how entrepreneurs often fail, not because they lack hard work, but because they lack perspective. They get so caught up in today's crisis, in this week's fire, that they never zoom out to see the entire board. A true strategist knows that the move you make today may cost you tomorrow, if you do not calculate correctly. For example, imagine you are offered a quick business deal that promises fast cash. It looks tempting, but what if that short-term move damages your reputation long-term? What if that partnership locks you into a situation that prevents you from scaling bigger later? On the chessboard of life, not every opportunity should be taken. Some are traps disguised as wins. A real strategist has the discipline to say no to a move that feels good now, but destroys the future. Patrick often speaks about the importance of thinking like a chess master. Before you move, ask, if I make this choice, what are the second and third consequences? How will this affect not just me, but my competitors, my family, my team, my resources? And most importantly, will this move align with my ultimate vision? Because every move must serve the end game. Let's take an example from history. Julius Caesar did not just cross the Rubicon River on a whim. He knew that act would spark a civil war. He had already calculated how the Roman Senate would respond, how his legions would rally, and how his rivals would either stand or fall. He was not moving a pawn, he was preparing checkmate. This is the power of reasoning from the chessboard. Patrick applies this same mindset to entrepreneurship. He explains that if you want to be a strong leader, you must anticipate moves not just of your team but also of your competitors. Imagine running a company. You cut your prices to attract more customers. Great. But what if your competitor responds by cutting even lower? Suddenly you are both bleeding profits and the only winner is the customer who is paying less. A strategist would have foreseen that possibility and chosen a different battlefield, maybe by adding unique value instead of cutting price. The question is, are you thinking 2 steps ahead or are you only thinking about today? Patrick emphasizes that your ability to think 5 moves ahead determines the scale of your success. If you think only 1 move at a time, you will forever be trapped in reacting. But if you train your mind to always see multiple possible outcomes, you gain control. It is like playing chess against someone who only thinks about their next piece. They are easy to defeat because you are already visualizing 3 or 4 outcomes ahead. And here is the truth. Life is not fair, but it is predictable. The moves people make can often be anticipated if you study human nature. Most people respond emotionally, impulsively, predictably. A grandmaster strategist does not just react, they exploit this predictability. They know that if they make a move that triggers anger in their rival, that rival will likely make a rash mistake. The same applies in business negotiations. If you know what the other side wants most, you can plan your offers in a way that nudges them exactly where you want them. Patrick's lesson here is to always analyze the game. He encourages readers to write down scenarios. If you make decision A, what are 3 likely outcomes? If you make decision B, what is the ripple effect 6 months later? This habit turns you into a long-term thinker. And here's the beauty. Once you practice this over and over, it becomes instinct. Just like a chess master instantly sees threats and opportunities on the board, you will begin to instantly sense the hidden consequences of daily life decisions. Patrick shares that in his own career, he often walked away from deals that looked great on the surface because he knew the hidden costs would appear later. For example, early on, he was offered investors who wanted to inject money but also wanted controlling power. Many entrepreneurs would jump at the cash, but Patrick saw the chessboard. He realized that one day these investors would own his dream. So he said no. Years later, that decision gave him full control of his company and allowed him to scale on his terms. This is what it means to think 5 moves ahead. Now let's bring this to your personal life. Maybe you want to buy a car. It looks affordable today, but what about the long-term insurance, maintenance, and loans? Will this decision help or hurt your financial future? Maybe you are considering a relationship. The person excites you, but what about values, long-term vision, family, and career alignment? Are you thinking 1 move ahead or 5? The chessboard principle is not just for business, it is for every decision in your life. Patrick says, never just play the game, study the game. That means observing not just what people do, but why they do it. That means learning patterns. That means asking, if I move here, how will this shift the balance of power, influence, or opportunity in my world? This kind of reasoning transforms you from a player into a strategist. And when you become a strategist, life stops feeling random. You begin to see the hidden order behind events. You realize that every choice matters. You understand that power comes not from reacting, but from anticipating. And when you can anticipate better than anyone else, you control the game. This is move 2, reasoning from the chessboard. Think, plan, anticipate, and act like a grandmaster. Because in the end, the ones who win are not the fastest movers, but the smartest ones.
In life and business, most people move like amateurs on a chessboard.
They think only about their next step, maybe 2. But the masters, the visionaries, the game changers, they see 5 moves ahead. That's what Patrick Bet-David reveals in Your Next 5 Moves. And now, as we bring this journey to its conclusion, it's time to put everything together in one powerful vision. Imagine standing at the crossroads of your life. To your left lies comfort, safety, and predictability. To your right lies uncertainty, risk, and growth. The decision you make right now determines the story of your life. Patrick argues that everything starts with clarity. You cannot play the game of business or life blindfolded. Your first move is to know exactly what you want. Without clarity, you're like a player pushing pawns without a plan, reacting instead of leading. And so, step one is asking yourself the hard questions. What do you really want? Is it money, influence, freedom, legacy, or impact? Once you decide, the fog clears and the board comes alive. Your second move is strategy. You now know the destination, but how will you get there? Strategy is the bridge between your dream and its reality. Strategy is about outthinking, not outworking. It's about seeing opportunities where others see dead ends, creating leverage where others waste time. Patrick compares it to anticipating your opponent's next 5 moves because if you don't, you'll always be the one reacting instead of controlling. Your third move is about scaling yourself and your vision. You cannot play a big game with small tools. You cannot reach the mountaintop with the mindset of the valley. Scaling means building systems, empowering others, and learning to multiply your impact. Leaders don't win by doing everything themselves. They win by creating other leaders, by building organizations that live beyond them. Your fourth move is mastering power plays. Life is a negotiation. Business is warfare of ideas. Every day, you're either gaining influence or losing it. Patrick teaches that power isn't about manipulation, it's about positioning. It's about aligning yourself with people who elevate you, making decisions that increase your leverage, and refusing to let fear or insecurity stop you from making bold plays. And finally, the fifth move, the move that ties everything together, is mastery. This is where you rise above being a hustler or even just an entrepreneur. This is where you become a chess master in your own life. Mastery means foresight, patience, resilience, and courage. It means you've developed the ability to see the ripple effects of every choice. You're no longer reacting to life, you're directing it, and that's the ultimate freedom. Patrick Bet-David's message is clear. If you want to win in life, you must play 5 moves ahead. But here's the hidden truth. Most people will never do it. They'll stay stuck in short-term thinking, chasing quick wins, making moves without vision. But you listening right now, you have a choice. Will you be the amateur who thinks 1 move ahead, or the master who shapes the board? Picture yourself 5 years from now. Will you look back with regret at the chances you didn't take? Or will you look back with pride at the empire you built, the risks you embraced, and the life you created? The next 5 moves are not just a strategy, they are your future. Remember this: clarity creates vision, strategy creates action, scaling creates impact, power plays create influence, and mastery creates legacy. This is the formula to live not just a successful life, but a significant one. And so, as this book closes, ask yourself one final question, the most important question of all. What will be your next 5 moves?